Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Some people feel they get to complain about what other people do on their own private property. Let's see how our OP handled it. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Typical jerk neighbors complain about the truck in my yard. I live in a mostly quiet neighborhood with lots of snowbirds and weekenders because of the proximity to a lake. The year-rounders are mostly retired and people generally get along fine. A couple years ago, neighbors on one side built a new garage and driveway, moving their cars much closer to my existing forsythia hedge. I love the forsythia in the spring and basically let it grow however it likes so I can have the bright yellow flowers. Almost immediately, they started complaining that the hedge blocked their view as they backed out of their driveway. In my state, neighbors have no right to a view extending over someone else's property, and our Supreme Court has repeatedly ruled that as long as trees and bushes do not actually impinge onto the roadway, property owners have no obligation to trim for visibility. I keep a 5-foot strip mowed between my hedge and the road, perfectly reasonable to my way of thinking. Since they have no recourse, RE hedges, they instead complain to county code enforcement about anything else they can think of. My brother parked his licensed and insured project truck on my property a while back because he was in the process of moving and needed a spot for it while he was figuring things out. In the meantime, he was in a bad accident in another vehicle, and the truck has been sitting for over a year now. The license plate recently expired, and I got a letter from the county with threats of fines if it wasn't removed. Cue the malicious compliance. My brother decided to sell the truck for scrap and had it towed away this morning. This gave my neighbors their temporary victory as they observed from their deck and nearly 6 inches of improved view from their driveway. At least until I moved my second vehicle, a 1960 Lincoln, which is about 2 feet longer than the truck, with current plates and insurance, into that place this afternoon. As a single person with more than one vehicle, I may get around to driving that old car at least once more before winter. And our second story. Don't be a craphead online. One of my ex-girlfriends had a mother who was a high school teacher. She was the sweetest thing, although she was also a total pushover. For this story's sake, we'll call her Margaret Jones. When I'd visit my ex, this woman almost wouldn't leave me alone. Constantly, "Can I get you something to eat? We had dinner earlier. Can I warm something up for you? Oh, I remember you like this hot sauce, so I picked some up for you and it's in the cupboard. Here, I'll show you where so you can use it when you like." Total sweetheart. Now, I can't particularly vouch for how she was as a science teacher, but I can only imagine she was probably overrun by crappy high school students who made her life hell. She probably had a hard time controlling the class in many situations. She just wasn't all that assertive. One day, my ex calls me, "Holy F, you have to see this Facebook group," and sends me the link. It's titled "Mrs. Jones is a C, ha ha ha," and has somewhere around 60 members, all high school students, talking crap about this poor woman, how they make her life hell, and what they've done / said to her, etc. Of course, my ex is deeply saddened because her mom's being slagged online. At the same time, my ex was completing her master's in university majoring in psychology. Her thesis was on bullying among teens. How ironic. My ex insists she contact Facebook to get it taken down. I told her no. Let me see what I can do first. This caused a bit of a fight between her and I, as I'm the one for teaching people a lesson, while she wanted to sweep it under the rug so her mom wouldn't find out and it'd just go away. Further, she didn't like eye for an eye mentality. First, I screenshot every conversation, every comment, every photo, just in case it went away somehow. I then wrote down every name, made a nice little Excel file with them all, and began my quest. Seeing as I knew where all these kids lived, well, the general region, I began to search out phone numbers of the kids who were stupid enough to link their parents on their Facebook accounts. I found numbers or profiles for almost everyone, in many cases multiples. Next up, I compiled all the screen grabs into a nice little one-page web page highlighting the worst comments, people's full names as listed on Facebook, essentially nothing that wasn't already public information. I just aggregated it together into a cute little package. Of course, this included phone numbers as well, Links to the Facebook group and the comments were below every photo. Now the fun starts. I begin calling the home phones of all these kids one by one. A typical conversation went as follows, with little deviation. Hi, is Mr. or Mrs. Blank available? Hello? Hi there, do you have a son or daughter named Blank? Yes, who's this? Well, I'm a concerned internet user who came across some very disturbing comments your child posted about their high school teacher. Oh, what? Well, if you go to Blank, I put them all together with some links for you. Parent views page. I'm so sorry. Well, so you're aware, I'm calling every parent with the same call. When I'm done, I'm submitting this to both the school board head office and the administration of the school. I'm so sorry my child did this, screams the name of child. Get in here now! Thanks. Try to have a good evening. I didn't get to find out the end details, but her mother obviously ended up finding out about the group, and the only info I got was that a good handful of the kids ended up getting suspended for between 1 and 5 days, depending on what they said. That was great and all, but I'm sure the wrath the parents laid out was far worse. I smirked to myself throughout the entire thing, knowing I was probably ruining these kids' spring breaks, as it was the week before. I should also note that my most memorable calls were to someone's grandparents. I had no idea what number was actually theirs when multiples were listed. A piece of me felt so bad when the poor grandmother answered, and when I tried to explain what was going on, just gasped. In that moment, the innocence of her grandchild just crumbled. I could hear it in her voice. I felt horrible for being responsible for that coming to light, more so because I probably upset the grandmother over the kid's image being tarnished. And our last story. We don't pay you to be 2 minutes late. Over the course of a year, it's hundreds of dollars. At a small specific retail store, 5 to 6 years ago at this point, I was confronted by my old boss on a specific event that I was late by 2 minutes. Previous day, he'd asked me to come in on my day off and at an earlier time than I normally do. I agreed to come in on my day off and work a shift I'm not normally used to, but it's retail, it can't be that difficult. My old boss asked me to work 7 a.m. to 4 p.m., and I showed up at 7:02 a.m., which in my state, there's a 5-minute window for everyone, and this was 100% not a habit of mine at all. I'm normally one to show up 5 minutes early every day and wait aside the time clock. I clocked in, walked to my department with a drink I'd already purchased the previous day. As I walked into the department, the manager greeted me, then said, "When I scheduled you at 7 a.m., I expect you to be in department at 7 a.m., not a minute later. We can't pay you to clock on, buy something, and then start working. Over the course of a year, that adds up to hundreds of dollars of lost labor for one individual." My old boss replied with, "That's not my problem. You need to plan better. You were scheduled at 7, and we're losing cost of labor each minute you're not here. Be in department at scheduled time." Which is not true. I spoke regularly with payroll employee, and she explained to me quite some time prior that the company does not pay you 3 minutes before or after your scheduled time. So if you clock in at 7 a.m., you're not getting paid until 7:03 a.m. If you clock in at 7:57 a.m., you're not getting paid until 7 a.m. Same for when you return from lunch. However, if you clock in at 7:04, after that 3-minute window, you begin getting paid immediately that minute. My boss was right. I need to plan better. I asked for a printout of my timestamps going back as far as they had record of, and I tallied up each day that I'd arrived 3 minutes early and did not get paid for it. I counted over 330 minutes within a 3-month span that I was not getting paid for, which ended up being a little over $110. I gave my old boss a copy and said, "You can pay me for these dates where I was in the department, on the dot, without getting paid for it." My old boss replied, "That's not how our company works." He then went into detail to explain to me exactly what I'd already known and gave him a copy of, yet my old boss is now recognizing that he's contradicted himself and willingly lied to me. When everything clicked in his head that he contradicted himself, it was far too obvious because his face went bright red and he started smiling. IMO, like he'd been caught. My old boss, "Well, you know the policy. We can't pay you for that." Me, "Then I'll begin my shift when I'm getting paid, not the minute you schedule me." It's not like you're losing labor if you're not even paying the employees that window of time. Schedule me at 7 if you like, but I'll not be clocking on until 4 minutes after the scheduled time, as you'll not be losing any cost of labor for it, and I'll not be losing any pay over your personal policy. For about 3 weeks, I clocked in 4 minutes late every day, no matter how early I arrived. I eventually got a warning from the building's HR that it's riding the line and very close to getting a write-up and down the discipline road. I explained to her the entire story, as she seemingly didn't like this manager of mine either. She laughed pretty hard at the whole thing and offered me a department transfer with higher pay. She reminded me that my behavior was listed under a category that could get me terminated and thought the transfer would be a fresh start. Instead, I put in my 2 weeks' notice and thanked her for the wonderful opportunity. The funniest part of all this, years later, I saw my old manager working at a new chain in a similar position to what he was doing when I worked for him. He smiled, waved, I smiled, waved, and continued on. As time went on, I also bumped into the old HR manager who was working in an entirely different field. I asked her why my old boss left that company. She laughed and said, "He didn't leave. We fired him for time theft." Apparently, my old boss would take a lunch, leave the building, and never clock out for it. What a lying hypocrite you worked for. I'm glad that you were able to show him up, and also that he was caught for doing way worse than what he accused you of doing. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.